A double dose of Rust. Hi, welcome to Garage Geeks. Today I'm going to be talking about two very different graphic novels. The first one is going to be It Rhymes with Lust, Revisited, and the second one is going to be Rusty Brown. It Rhymes with Lust was originally published in 1950, and this is touted as the first graphic novel. It's interesting because this is a noir. There were already noir movies from the 40s, and in fact, this references a lot of noir. But this was published in 1950, and the characters were based off of real actors, the three main characters in the book. And once I knew that, I saw the main character as Betty Davis. The way she rants in parts of this book, I just saw Betty Davis acting up a storm. It was quite funny. So this is the Noir of Matt Baker, Volume 1. And when I received this, it had this beautiful reprinted cover. And it has the back with the characters. And then I opened it up and I was, at first, disappointed that it was in black and white, but I believe the original was in black and white. I know my volume 2 is coming in the mail, and I believe that one is all in color. Well, we'll see when I get it. This was written by Drake Waller. Now, Drake Waller is actually an amalgamation of two people, and one of them was famous in comics because he went on to create a lot of characters. But here he's working with another writer, and they definitely created a noir piece of work. And what this is also famous for is the artist, Matt Baker. Now, Matt Baker is very famous for what's called good girl art. Now, I learned about Matt Baker and good girl art from Comic Collector Geek. So he inspired me to start delving into these older comics, and I'm so glad that he did. What I'm going to say, overall review, this is a must-read just because of the art and the hilarity that ensues. Now, this is supposed to be a serious piece of work, and it does tell a serious story, but it's got every noir cliche ever, and the dialogue, I was bursting out laughing. It's so funny. I don't think it's meant to be. It's over the top. It's very camp, but it's so much fun. I highly recommend this. It's readily available. Pretty cheap on Amazon. I think I paid $20. But what's really, really cool is the art. So I'm not going to give away this story, but there's basically three main characters, and there's a love triangle, and one woman is virtuous and is innocent, and the other woman is pure evil. But what you're going to see in this is you're going to see when these full page spreads come along, they're gorgeous to look at in all of the detail. There's quite a few of them. You're also going to see a lot of these really classic good girls. Supposedly that's called the good girl art. But you're going to see some really hysterical things. For example, every time I see this, I actually took a picture of this. For example, she slaps her in the face and says, "Shut your nasty mouth." You're going to come across all that kind of stuff in this graphic novel. You're going to see classic poses like that. The introduction by Mitch Malio is also really over the top, and it's actually quite informative, especially if you're like me and you don't know anything of this time period in comics. But he takes pains to talk about how important the inker is. And the inker's name in this is Roy Osren. And this one is really apparent because the way it's inked, he will often ink a couple of things as the more important things for your eye to focus on, darker, and then the background inking is much lighter. Let me find another example of that. On this page, we've got this explosion, and in the foreground, we got this child and this lamppost to give perspective, and they're much more darkly inked than the background explosion. So as I was saying, this comic really is a lot of fun. It doesn't take that long to read. I think I read it in two sittings of maybe about 45 minutes to an hour each. But the reason it takes so long is because your eye just lingers over the art, because the details in it and the inking is just so strikingly beautiful. Here's another example where the two figures are inked more heavily, and then the background figures are much more lightly inked. I am going to say again that there were quite a few instances where I was reading through this and I just laughed out loud. The dialogue and the writing is very campy, very fun. I mean, Look at that. And the way that they insult each other, and this woman is constantly slapping people. Here's another example where the two most important figures are more heavily inked, while the background figures are not. Another gorgeous example, the three figures are heavily inked, but the page, the layout, everything about that could have been the cover of a romance comic. For example, here's an instance where I was just laughing. She says, I've got to teach you the hard way, like this and this and this. And she's repeatedly slapping her. And it doesn't end there. She's like, I really shouldn't do this sort of thing. My nails are brittle. I guarantee you read this, you're going to have a lot of fun. They're really milking this love triangle for all it's worth. There's another full-page spread where the virtuous girl is running away. This is probably my favorite image in the book. He's more heavily inked, and he's just been thrown at the bottom of this chasm or ditch. More like a ditch. So originally, I believe that this was much smaller. I think it was in actually a book form. This was originally called A Picture in Novels. And that's on the original title up here. And I believe it was the size of a book. But it's so nice that they expanded it to this size and blew up this art into full page like that. Despite the fact that this is black and white, I'm actually kind of glad because it really made the inks pop. As I was initially disappointed, I really grew to appreciate the art for just the black and white and the inks. I'm going to have to say that this is a short read, and I think it's a must-have. If you're interested in the history of comics, if you like film noir, if you like camp, if you like sassy dialogue, if you like thugs with guns, mobsters, malls, slinky dresses, you're gonna love this. And I would say that this is a 5 out of 5. You really do need to pick this up and read it. So part 2 of this is going to focus on the graphic novel Rusty Brown by Chris Ware. I can't heap enough praise on this. This actually took me a really, really long time. It's rather thick. And it was originally published in 3 parts. This was put together, but it's actually 4 parts because the 4th part was just added in. Other people have made very good videos about this. So I'm not going to go too into depth. And I actually didn't pull any scans because it was just so overwhelming. There's so much to show, so much that you could focus on. The art in this, at first glance, seems cartoony, but it's gorgeous. There's always something for your eye to feast on. For example, I'm going to show you a double-page spread that came from the Joanna Cole section. And, I mean, look at that. And there's Joanna Cole. She's at the bus stop waiting. And of course, this is to show her complete isolation as a character. But look at that gorgeous art. Your eye can roam around that page for as long as you want. There's just so much detail, and it's just so gorgeously done. From beginning to end, this is an art piece. So you've got this hardcover book that is gorgeous in itself. And then you've got this wraparound cover that opens up and there's more art inside of it, and even the frontispiece opens up. This thing is just like I said, an art piece from beginning to end. There's always something new, some new treasure to find. And I will say that I read this through once, and I absolutely will have to read it again. It's very layered, it's very complex. Basically about 4 characters, and the 4 characters and then some minor ones. So let me go ahead and show you. There's the frontispiece, Rusty Brown. Now, those are the characters that you're going to follow. The major characters, I think it's 1, 2, 3, and 4. But there's also a lot of little things. So, for example, in one part of the graphic novel, one of the characters wrote a science fiction story. And then they full on go into the comic and they do the whole science fiction story. It was mesmerizing. Everything about this is amazing. What I was trying to tell you is that in each section, all the other characters are referred to, but you won't make the connections about them until you get to the end, because you don't learn about Joanna Cole until the last 4th. But she appears in every other character's section. And of course, once you know her story, you can impart more meaning to when she shows up. Likewise, in her section, all the other characters are showing up. In the first section of this novel, you actually have two stories going on at the same time. You have this top part from one character's point of view, and then this bottom part by another character's, and they intersect. And you see the same scene from two different characters' point of view. I'm going to say that you probably would be best served by having a magnifying glass handy. There were many times when I was squinting to read the text. Talk about the text. He will often overlap text when multiple people are talking. He just does, the writer does very interesting things with this text. I don't know if I can gush enough about this graphic novel. This is an absolute must read. It's a 5 out of 5. I would absolutely revisit this. This thing is a winner. It's probably one of the most layered and complex graphic novels that I've ever read when it comes to characterization. This graphic novel is all about characters, and there are a lot of themes of isolation, looking back on your life and looking at all the mistakes that you've made, fitting in society. Every section has something really interesting to say. It's definitely not a feel-good graphic novel, but there's so much joy that you can get from the everyday scenes. In some ways, it did remind me of the Japanese animated movies where it will linger over nature because your eye has to linger over all the details in the panels. For example, when it does show nature like this, I just find that to be a stunning piece of art. I would actually like to rip it out of this book and hang it on my wall. Oh, and by the way, this graphic novel in the hardcover form on Amazon right now is only $20, and that is a steal. So today I gave you a double dose of Rusty. Whether you would like to pick up one or both, I highly recommend both for very, very different reasons. This one is very serious. It actually took him 15 years to complete. He published each section over time. This one was written over 70 years ago, and it's just this fun romp and can introduce you to the world of Matt Baker and Good Girl art. And if you're already a fan of that stuff, then you absolutely need to have this in your collection. So where am I going from here? As I said before, my second volume of the work, the noir or the work, I think this one is going to be the work of Matt Baker, because I don't think it's noir. It's going to be Good Girl art. So that one's coming in the mail. And I was very lucky because on Facebook, I was able to buy a bunch of graphic novels. And I got this one called Jimmy Corrigan, I think it's called. And this is another one by Charles Ware. I think his name is Charles Ware, the author. But I only got this for $3. I was so lucky. But what I didn't realize is that it was the softbound. So I would love to actually own the hardbound, because, they would look so much better together on this shelf. So what do you think about those two graphic novels? Very different, both very cheap, relatively speaking, available on Amazon. If you've read either, please put that in the comments. What did you think? If you would like to read one or the other, which one would you? Or both? Please let me know in the comments. I always love to hear the comments. And again, I want to thank you all for the support.